All right, everyone. Welcome to No Buts About It. We are trying something new here, and for this new adventure, I have Stan the Jet Fan here with me. We're doing something called the 3-minute drill. So, what we're going to do is Stan and I are going to go back and forth asking each other a series of questions, and we're just going to try to answer them maybe a little quicker than 3 minutes, maybe as long as 3 minutes, depending on the question. But ultimately, it's just going to be a quick segmented thing, kind of similar to our full show, but just a little bit more nuanced and tight. So, Stan, welcome back to the show. You've been here before. What's going on?
Well, it's great to be back. Watched the game last night. Very good game. You know me, the Justin Herbert supporter. So I love that. The NFL starting up week one. My team's playing on Sunday. Everyone's team really is playing on Sunday. So much excitement. I'm just excited for the season.
Yeah, that game last night, I think a lot of people lost money on that game, and there were also, I think, some people upset with their fantasy teams as well, based on the social media posts I saw. But I believe you have the first set of questions, if I understand this correctly. So, do you want to hop on in and get started here?
Yeah, let's jump into it. Let's talk Bengals, baby. Every time I see a Bengals prediction, there seems to be just such a wide range for what that team can do, and I see them as a team because of their offense. You could see them in the Super Bowl. That wouldn't be a big surprise. But because of that defense, you also wouldn't be surprised if they missed out on the playoffs. Let's talk about the Bengals season. Where are the wins? Where are the losses? How does their season end?
Yeah, so the Cincinnati Bengals, I mean, they were a weird team last year and they're going to be a weird team again this year, I think. Like you said, their predictions are kind of all over the place with where they're going to land. So if we look at the Bengals schedule, they have a very, very hard schedule this year. AFC North obviously is super difficult to begin with, but then they're also playing the NFC North, which if you watch the full show, I think that's going to be another big division as well. And then you've got games against some AFC West teams as well. I think this Bengals Browns game is really going to tell us a lot about this team. Because yes, it's the Browns, and I know that most teams kind of look at the Browns as a joke. They look at them as a team that you're not going to take seriously. No one knows who their quarterback is going to be. Joe Flacco is starting. This should be an easy win for a team that we're talking about possibly being in the Super Bowl. But, and here's the big but, besides me, Joe Burrow historically has had a problem with the Cleveland Browns. On top of that, it's a division rival. And then on top of that, the Bengals have historically not done well early in the season. Historically, the Bengals have often started 0-2. This year, Zach Taylor has changed some things, and we're going to see if that pays off against a rival that the Bengals have struggled against in the past, and if it's going to pay off for something Zach Taylor as a head coach has struggled with in the past. If the Bengals win this game, I think the narrative shifts a little bit to seeing if they can really kind of be that competitive team we expect them to be. And all eyes are going to be on the defense because I think we already know what this offense is capable of.
Yeah. And I was going to ask this next question a little bit later, but I think now is a perfect time to talk about it. Starting your starters in the preseason, playing them, getting them a lot of run, that's not a very popular thing in the NFL. And one thing, Sean McVay is a coach who popularized keeping your starters out of those games, letting them rest, making sure they're healthy when the season starts. How important is that to the Bengals' success? Is that a real thing? Will having your starters have more run in the preseason, do you think that's going to impact the Bengals' ceiling?
Yeah, so Sean McVay, when he came onto the scene, one of the things he did was he did not play his starters in the preseason. And he made it to a Super Bowl with that kind of ideology. And so there were a lot of coaches around the league that said, oh, we don't need to risk our starters getting hurt in games that are pretty much meaningless for them. We know that, Joe Burrow is going to be on this team. He is not fighting for a roster spot. So Sean McVay kind of started this, in my opinion, And Zach Taylor is a Sean McVay guy. He comes from that coaching tree. So it kind of makes sense that Zach Taylor would follow that same ideology as well. However, the Bengals, as I said before, need that momentum. And they've struggled to find that momentum early. I think that this year we got to see the offense come out and get that momentum. We saw them play well. Now, there were some snaps that I didn't want Joe Burrow in on, admittedly. I'm pointing to the Commanders game specifically because that just scared me. And I was like, pull him now. But Joe Burrow's competitive. It's the way he is. He wanted to be in there. He wanted to be in there last season, and Zach told him no. Zach barely let him play at all last preseason. This preseason was different. So we'll see if the results are different. That is yet to be seen. We'll find out tomorrow. But I do think there is something to gaining that momentum early on. And then if we flip it to the other side of the ball, the defense has to work on these schemes now. They have to figure out what is going on. We have a new defensive coordinator. We have a lot of defensive rookies. We have a lot of defensive players that aren't rookies but haven't really started before that are starting this year. We have a lot of free agents on the defensive side of the ball that have come in. So there's a lot of work that the Bengals are going to need to do to kind of, get everything gelling, and the preseason is the perfect opportunity for that.
Yeah, and it's going to be so interesting to see how this plays out. I, for one, have no opinion on whether you should start your guys early, except for the cultural impact of it. Looking at the Jets, for example, with Aaron Glenn being so strict, so team first, having that mentality, pushing that on the players. I think starting guys like Joe Burrow, the guys who are the stars of the team early on, helps the team know we're all in this together, right? We're all in this to win, to get into the playoffs, to hopefully win a Super Bowl. But let's move on. Talking about the Bengals' losses and struggles, it's very obvious it comes from one side of the ball, and it's not the side that led the NFL in passing yards and passing touchdowns. It's the other one, right? It's clearly the defense that's causing the issues for the Bengals. That's been the thorn in your and every Bengals fan side through last season. Who are the X factors on this Bengals defense? Anyone new to the scene who you're keeping an eye on this season?
Yeah, so obviously Trey Hendrickson is on that list. Everyone and their mother knows Trey Hendrickson needs to perform for the Cincinnati Bengals defense to be worth anything. But looking beyond that, this defense has a chip on their shoulder, I think. And T. Higgins even came out and said that he was annoyed with all the talk about this defense. He's tired of hearing his teammates get just dogged. Now, I'm not saying that, last year the Bengals defense wasn't bad. We know that. But they're upset. They want to change that narrative. Tomorrow is a perfect time to do that. Do it against a division rival. Do it against someone you struggled against. And there are two guys that I'm really looking at tomorrow to step up that I don't know that a lot of people necessarily will be right away. So the first one is a rookie. It's our second round pick in the linebacker room, Demetrius Knight Jr. This is a pick that I really liked, and I want him to live up to the hype. He's an older prospect, so he's not going to really have time to develop. He needs to come onto the scene and make an immediate impact. So something the Bengals struggled with last year was the linebackers. It was really Logan Wilson who was carrying that room. Jermaine Pratt ended up getting let go, and then the Bengals drafted two linebackers this year. They drafted Demetrius Knight, and they drafted Barrett Carter. So I think Demetrius Knight needs to come onto the scene. He needs to prove that he can tackle. That is a big thing that the Bengals linebackers weren't able to do last year, and it hurt them. So that is the first guy that I'm really going to be paying attention to tomorrow on the Bengals defensive side of the ball. The other guy is another second-round pick from last season, Chris Jenkins. Now, Chris Jenkins, he just, he was a guy who didn't get a ton of playing time last season. And that was part of Lou's kind of, I don't want to start the young guy over a vet if I have a vet that can play, but we didn't really have a vet that could play. And then Chris Jenkins was hurt for part of the time, and it was just it wasn't great. But I want Chris Jenkins to come on in his second year and show us why we made him a second-round pick. Show us that Michigan Wolverine mutant nickname that he earned in college. Now what's he going to do in the NFL? Make us proud, Chris.
Yeah, and let's go back to where you started, Trey Hendrickson, right? He's one of, in my opinion, a handful, maybe two handfuls of guys in the NFL who you could call a true game wrecker. He's a guy who, if you're a coach, you're trying to scheme your offense, he's the first name you're looking at when you're playing the Bengals, right? He is the scariest guy in that defense. Now, this last year, there's been this contract negotiation issue constantly going on with the Bengals, with Trey Hendrickson. You got him to play this season, but you only gave him a raise. He's going to be a free agent in the very near future. What is the end play here? Do you think the Bengals are going to give him some big contract? Do you think we'll see maybe a week 6, week 7 contract extension this year? Where do the Bengals go from here with their biggest star on defense?
Yeah, so Trey Hendrickson, first of all, it felt so good to see this kind of celebration again in practice, seeing him pointing up at the sky. I mean, that's his thing. People know that, giving glory to God. That's what Trey Hendrickson's all about. But yeah, the Bengals didn't extend him. And I've even misused it a few times as well. I have said the Bengals extended Trey Hendrickson. That is not what happened. They gave him a pay raise. I believe it was a $14 million pay raise. And the Bengals never were really upset with the money aspect of things. It was the guarantees that they were concerned about. I believe it was reported that they offered him 3-year, $96 million, and he was good with that. He said he wanted that, but there were no guarantees in year 2, which was what upset him. Now, the Bengals are known for not really liking to extend guys over the age of 30. That has changed a little bit over the years. That changed yesterday. The Bengals just extended Ted Karras again, and he is 32. So something I could see the Bengals doing here is saying, and all the negative people online, they're saying he's going to get traded midway through the year, like he's going to be a free agent next year. I could see the Bengals in that room saying, okay, Trey, you're older. You're over that 30 threshold that we don't really like. Go improve it. Go improve it to us that you can be the sack leader again, or at least competitive for the sack leader. Show us that you're not going to fall off a cliff. And then we will talk about adding money to your contract. We'll talk about these guarantees. Because, could it happen that Trey just, falls off a cliff this season? Yeah. Could he get hurt? Yeah. I don't think that's going to happen, though. That's not what we've seen from Trey. And he's a great player to have on the team. I think they'd be stupid to let him walk in free agency next season. And I think the Bengals have slowly evolved past letting that happen, but I could be wrong as well. We'll have to wait and see. We can speculate all we want, but that's where we are.
Let's live in a nightmare for a second, Josh. Let's pretend Trey Hendrickson walks away in free agency. He goes somewhere else, maybe the Steelers. He goes to Pittsburgh, gets a ton of sacks there. The next guy up in a lot of Bengals fans' minds is Shamar Stewart. Now, personally, I'm not very high on him. I don't see the projections as much as Bengals fans and many other NFL fans see him. Where do you see Shamar Stewart? Does he have any potential to be that Trey Hendrickson guy, or do you expect just a good starter on the D-line?
Yeah, so Shamar Stewart's an interesting guy. Something that we've talked about before and something that kind of worried me a little bit when we drafted him and when I was looking at different draft prospects was he doesn't have production. Like, objectively, he had 4.5 sacks in 3 years of college. That's not a great stat for a defensive end. However, he was a great pressure guy. He got to the quarterback. He just wasn't able to close. And, some people are going to say, we want a closer on our team, and that's fair. But Shamar Stewart, he was able to get pressures, and that alone is something the Bengals didn't have last year with Sam Hubbard. So I love Sam Hubbard. Pretty much every Bengals fan loves Sam Hubbard, but he was slow last year. And when you have a guy like Lamar Jackson in a division rival, you can't have a slow defensive end. It just won't work. So Shamar Stewart comes into the league. All sorts of stuff we're putting in the past. He is an athletic freak. In terms of athletic traits, in terms of his combine, in terms of like being in the percentile of height and weight and all that, he is a freak. I think his relative athletic score was a 10. He's a 10 out of 10. If not a 10, he's very close to it. Now, that being said, that doesn't necessarily always translate to being a great player. I mean, Myles Garrett, he is an insane prospect. He is your perfect kind of guy that you're going to build. He obviously has become a very good player. Everyone knows Myles Garrett. Now, for every Myles Garrett, though, you have an Anthony Richardson, who Anthony Richardson should be a very good quarterback. He has all the physical traits. He has all the things you're looking for other than the experience. Which way is Shamar going to go? I don't know, but I do know that Trey Hendrickson has been coaching him up. Trey Hendrickson's been helping him, and he seems to want to play. He wants to work hard. He's had a good preseason now that he's playing. We've seen him in training camp, and he's looked good. I am more optimistic about Shamar Stewart being on this team than I was when they drafted him. Now, he's going to have to work for it, and he's got a lot to prove, but I think that he can. And I don't think he's going to be Myles Murphy 2.0, like a lot of people have called him.
He had 3 seasons in college, 1.5 sacks every single season. And you said you don't really expect him to make that jump as a closer, but let's hear it right now. What is the sack projection for Shamar at the end of the season? How many sacks does he walk away with, if any?
I think he'll have some. I think Shamar Stewart should have at least 5 sacks at the end of this season, because he's going to be the starting defensive end. I could see Trey's very good at stealing sacks as well. That's kind of his thing. So I could see Trey stealing some, but that's fine. As long as the quarterback ends up on the ground, I don't really care who put them there, So I think Shamar should get at least 5 sacks though.
Yeah, I mean the Bengals need to need him to step up this season as a rookie. A lot of pressure on Shamar Stewart. And one thing I'm thinking about as we're having this discussion is looking at your division. Those are 3 teams who are going to run the ball, I would expect, more than the average NFL team, right? The Ravens, we know they're going to run it. They want to run the ball a lot. Obviously, they have 2 of the best tools in the NFL to get that job done. The Browns will probably run the ball even more than them, not really by choice as much for the Browns, but they're gonna do that. The Steelers have a very old quarterback. They might lean more on the run than they have in recent years. So having guys who can put those quarterbacks in a 2nd and 13, in a 3rd and 11, those sort of situations where now you're adding that extra pressure, there's a few extra yards, you're not running your normal plays, that can be a really big key for the Bengals. So for the Bengals, you definitely need Shamar Stewart. You need Trey Hendrickson to take those steps up. Maybe not so much for Trey. He could do exactly what he did last year. You'll be perfectly fine. But Shamar Stewart, you need him to take that step up to get after that quarterback, put teams in tough situations. And Trey Hendrickson, again, he is who he is. He's a game record. There's, depending on your definition for that, there's between 5 and 10 of those guys in the NFL. Who's on your list as true game records in the NFL, defensive players who make such a big impact?
Yeah, so obviously I'm putting Trey up there. I've got Trey on there. I'm gonna just throw in a corner or a DB real quick. Patrick Surtain, he can eliminate an entire side of the field. I've watched games with the Broncos where like they'll put PS2 over on one side and the quarterback just won't throw over there, even though he's just over there on an island. Especially last year, PS2, he's not getting sacks obviously, but he can change the game and he can affect the game in somewhat of a silent manner. And then the others are all going to be defensive ends, just because I think that when we think of game record, that's where you tend to lean most of the time. I'm going to go Aiden Hutchinson. People, I think, have forgotten about him a little bit because of his injury, but he's an insane player. He's an insane pass rusher. He's got some nice swim moves that he uses on tackles that they just can't seem to get up. He's also got this nice little like twist move that I like, where he kind of looks like a tornado at first. It's kind of cool looking, especially in the Lions jerseys. Micah Parsons, who we're going to talk about here in a little bit, he's another guy who everyone knows about Micah Parsons. He's an athletic freak who can, change the game. He can drop into coverage too. And same thing with TJ Watt. TJ Watt occasionally drops into coverage, not as often. And really Micah Parsons doesn't as much either. But when a quarterback just completely ignores the side of the field you're playing on, I think that says something about you. So I think I said Trey Hendrickson, Aiden Hutchinson, Micah Parsons, PS2. So there's 4 right there.
How about Diggs? What do you think about Diggs?
Trayvon Diggs?
Yeah. Because I'm just...
My issue with him is he has an injury issue at times. So I don't know that I'd put him in that same category as PS2, but I think he can. I think he can be there.
Yeah, I'm just thinking back to when he was, leading the NFL in interceptions. That just, what was it? It was like a 7 or 8 game run where he was probably the best defensive back in the NFL. Let's see if he could stay healthy and get that going. But I'm tempted to add him to the list. I don't know if I'm going there yet, but I'm definitely tempted. Another guy I'm tempted to add to that list. He's a rookie, Abdul Carter, because I'm looking at preseason and he showed flashes. He did have bad moments as well, but that's what rookies do. Looking at practice, looking at the joint practices, because I watch a lot of clips from the Jets Giants joint practice. He was looking very dominant in practice with the Giants. He's looking dominant as a rookie. What does he have to do to get to that level of a game record this season?
For me, he would just, if he can come in and he's going to have a higher kind of expectation than what even Shamar Stewart's going to have. I think he'd have to come in and get 8 sacks at least his rookie year, and that's going to be hard on that defense, especially someone I just thought of when you brought up the Giants. Dexter Lawrence. He's another guy who he can just end your entire run game. He can take 2 interior O-line guys and just take them out of the game. But I think that Abdul Carter would need to, kind of create that pocket pressure regularly, almost every snap with where he's expected to be. Because he's supposed to be this generational player. That's what the Giants drafted him to be in terms of pass rush. So if he can do that, I'd put him up there. It's going to be hard though, I think.
Yeah, sadly, it's an uphill battle for a rookie to get to that level, but I'm buying in on the hype there. We're going to talk about the Giants in a little bit, so we'll see how that shakes out. But when I play a video game and I'm customizing my character, I put everything in speed. The Giants put everything on their D-line, right? That D-line is so dominant, and I think that's the type of environment where a guy like Carter, he's not going to be the first guy you're scheming against for a lot of these offenses who are going up against the Giants early on. I think he's going to have to earn his way to be the first guy those O-lines are planning against, right? And I do think that's another, if you're a game wrecker, you have to be the guy. You have to be, Micah Parsons level, the guy everyone's looking at. It's going to be an uphill battle because of that as well for him on a team like the Giants, who I think they're going to be a fun team to watch this year compared to the last couple of years, but I don't think they're going to be good yet. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Back to this game record discussion. Micah Parsons, right, the most game-wrecking of game wreckers in the NFL, just got moved to the Packers. Crazy move. I didn't see it happening. I really thought he was going to stay with the Cowboys. I didn't think they were going to let such a dominant player get traded away. I also don't think it was the best return, but that's a different discussion. How much does Micah Parsons impact the Packers season? Are they a top 2, top 3 team now? Where do you see them?
I think, honestly, the Packers were Super Bowl contenders before the Micah Parsons trade, and now they're even more so. I actually moved them up in the division after the Micah Parsons trade. I had them getting 3rd in the division. Now I have them getting 2nd in division. I don't know that they'll win their division, but they can easily win the Super Bowl without winning the division as well. I mean, that division itself is going to be a playoffs, It's a hard division. And I've said the word division too much now. It means nothing. But Micah Parsons, he's someone, like I said, you can drop him into coverage. He doesn't do it a whole lot anymore, but he is a guy who, Jared Goff, he can be mobile, but he's not super mobile. Send Micah Parsons after him. That can be troubling for Jared Goff. And if Micah Parsons can get to him a few times in a game against the Lions, we might be talking a little differently. And they've got Aiden Hutchinson too, and they'll be doing the same thing. I think Micah Parsons elevates that defense to a new level where the offense was already pretty good. They were able to win games consistently last year. Jordan Love was able to put the ball where he needed to, even with kind of a somewhat ragtag group of wide receivers. And I don't mean that to drag down any of their wide receivers, but they had a lot of injuries and they didn't really have the guy. There's not a wide receiver on the Packers where you're like, okay, yeah, he's their dude. He's their Justin Jefferson. He's their Jamar Chase. The Packers don't really have that, but they do have Josh Jacobs. So the offense was set. The Packers didn't really have a great pass rush. They had an okay pass rush, but now they have a great pass rush. There are concerns about whether Micah is going to be able to play this week because of his injury that he apparently has, which I thought was interesting. I wonder if they knew about that before the trade or if Jerry Jones knew about that before the trade. That could be something to talk about as well. But we will see where this goes. I like them as Super Bowl contenders, though.
And let's jump into our next section. Talk about the Jets, my team, New York. Let's start off by looking at the Jets schedule. I have it pulled up here, and I'm going to run through the games to let you know where I see wins, losses, and toss-ups. And week one, I think, is going to be a toss-up against the Steelers. It's going to be at home for the Jets, which doesn't mean as much to the Jets as some other teams in the NFL. But being at home with the quarterback of the other team being your quarterback from a failed season last year, I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on Rodgers. I think the fans are going to get at it. And I think the Jets have that home advantage very firmly in a game like this against Rodgers. But Rodgers is also a guy who isn't really known for getting shaken by things like this. So that's going to be a true toss-up. After that, two tough games. You got the Bills, have them at home. I don't think it makes much of a difference anyway with the Bills. And then you have Tampa Bay right here, actually 5 miles that direction at Raymond James Stadium. And I think that's going to be another loss, unfortunately. But then you see the Dolphins. It's going to be a September Dolphins game in Miami. Lots of heat, very tough for the players. But I think the Jets are going to pull out a victory there. That, to me, I think at that point in the season, if you're 2-2 there, you got to make a trade. Get ideally maybe buff up that O-line, get another offensive guard, get a wide receiver, see what you can do. If you're not 2-2, if you're 1-3, or you haven't won anything, then yeah, focus on the younger guys, build in. That to me is the litmus test early on in the season. After that, you got the Cowboys, who are now at least one big player weaker. At home, I think that's a toss-up, but definitely leading the Cowboys' way. Broncos, we meet them in London. I think that's going to go the Broncos' way. We don't do well on the road in general. But I also think with a first-time head coach going to England against a guy like Sean Payton, I think that's going to be a bit too much for Aaron Glenn, at least right now. I don't know if he's going to have the team as organized as he needs to. That's going to be another loss. And then you have the Panthers win, Bengals loss. Browns, I think, will be a win at home especially, followed by Thursday Night Football, Patriots loss, Ravens loss, Falcons loss, I'd say. Dolphins at home, we should be able to win that one. Jaguars at home, second week of December. I think at that point in the season, we should be able to beat the Jaguars. You should have those younger guys playing well enough. You should be prepared enough to beat them on the road. Then you see the Saints on the road. That should be another game where, this is the end of the season here. The first-year head coach has had time to make that offense, make that defense mesh together well, get those younger guys up to speed. That should be another win. I see this as with losses to the Patriots and Bills in the next 2 weeks. I see this as enough of a easy schedule where you should be able to get 6 wins here. I think you win 1 or 2 of those toss-ups, and those easier games, Like the Saints, you should win that, even on the road. The Jaguars, not an easier game per se, but the Jaguars have not been a very well-run franchise. We'll see what they look like this season. I think that's another win there.
Okay. Yeah, you guys have some promise, but you definitely some places you could add. And I think one of those rooms, and actually two that we're going to talk about here, but for first, your wide receivers. What's going on over there? You know, you got this dude right here, and then after that, it's kind of, you know, I think most people are kind of lost. So, Stan, walk us through the Jets wide receiver room and who's starting.
Well, before we even get into that, what a puzzling offseason that was. In the preseason, there were some guys, some UDFAs who I really thought were going to make, three of them, who I thought would have been good inclusions on the roster. Brandon Smith was my favorite. You also have Skinner, who some people like more than Smith. For me, Smith, he had two great preseasons in a row. He's an older guy. He's a veteran. And my favorite thing about him, his hands are like glue. He catches the ball, he holds onto it. That skill specifically is something with a guy like Lazard also on the team, something I need more of. I need guys who can hold on to the ball. Just do that for me, and we'll move in the right direction. Unfortunately, neither of those guys make it. Jamal Pritchard also didn't make it. Rough offseason looking into it. I really thought we had a diamond in the rough from one of those three. But, yeah, it's just Garrett Wilson in that wide receiver room. After that, Josh Reynolds, this is the official depth chart. It's Josh Reynolds, then Alan Lazard, Xavier Gibson, and then Arian Smith. Really rough room there. I think Josh Reynolds is going to be fine. I don't think he's a wide receiver two, a good wide receiver two, but I think he'll be fine as a wide receiver two. Then you have Lazard as a three, which to me is a little too much. I don't see the skill set there either. I don't see what he brings to this team that Brandon Smith wouldn't have brought if you had him on the roster. I think at this point in time, the best bet, in my opinion, is try to trade Lazard early in the season, see which teams are looking for a wide receiver, and use that capital to bring in someone who could be a wide receiver too. You're going to spend more in terms of capital than you're going to gain in that transaction, obviously. But I think that is the best bet, because if you have Josh Reynolds as wide receiver three, you have a slightly above average wide receiver two in Garrett Wilson. So easily, that wide receiver room might be a top 15, top 10 room in the league, right? It's just that wide receiver two position. That's what I really need. So hopefully they figure that out. Right now, though, not looking too great.
Okay. What about your running back room? So you've got Breece Hall. We thought maybe 2 seasons ago, maybe a season ago, this dude was going to be one of the faces of running backs in the NFL. But then this guy came onto the scene, Braylon Allen, and maybe that's not as clear anymore. So what does Braylon Allen, and I just took you out of the thing, I'll bring Stan back, but what does Braylon Allen bring to the table that, Breece Hall maybe doesn't, and could this result in a running back trade?
Well, let's take a step back. Look at Breece Hall as a player. Look at his evolution over the last few years. He's very clearly taken consistent steps back throughout last season, going into this season and last season. I think you saw those steps back. Braylon Allen is the opposite. He's been moving better throughout last season. He was a rookie last year, and he did very well for a rookie running back. To me, he's a guy who will fight for those first downs. He is preferred over Breece Hall, in my opinion, in any 4-yard or less situation, right? If we have a 3rd and 4, I really don't want Breece Hall there. I want Braylon Allen. He's a tough runner. He will gut through the interior of the O-line, and Breece Hall is just not looking well with the interior of the O-line. He doesn't find those holes. He doesn't read it very well. To me, Breece Hall, get him on some passing actions. Get him more involved in that part of the game. Get him some flats, some slants, right? Just get him the ball 2 or 3 yards above the D-line. Let him fight with the linebackers, because they're at that level. That's where he is best, right? When you get him a little bit of space on the sides, let him go against some defensive backs and some linebackers. He could use his speed there well. Braylon Allen, to me, he's the guy for the interior when you just got to punch the ball in. I also like Isaiah Davis for those interior runs. And I think what I expect to happen is Isaiah Davis will be sort of Braylon Allen's backup. So maybe towards the end of the game, you might see him have a couple snaps. I also wouldn't be surprised if he's inactive for a few games early on, especially as the Jets try to figure out what they have in Braylon Allen. There's also Kenny Nwangwu. He is, in terms of, statistically speaking, he is a top 10 returner in terms of his ability to get touchdowns and yardage all time in the NFL. But he can't stay healthy, and he hasn't been able to do anything outside of that. And that's why he hasn't had a great career so far, mainly because of the injury part of that. But I saw him this preseason. He was looking good in the run game. I have a feeling that the Jets coaching staff was able to find something there to bring out and to maybe have him be the Breece Hall Jr. of the offense, right? End of the game, if you're up by a lot or down by a lot, you don't want to risk as much with Breece Hall, Braylon Allen. Bring out Isaiah Davis, let Nwangwu get some run, see what those guys can do. So I think the room is deeper, but the biggest takeaway for me going into the season that I would let people know about is Breece Hall. I'm not very high on him. I just don't think he's going to have as much yardage as the last couple of years, and I think that's a good thing. I think with a lower yardage situation, put less wear and tear on him, I think he'll be a better player.
Something Lee here brought up before we move on to the next question. Braylon Allen's only 21 too, so he's in his second year in the NFL, but he's younger than pretty much every rookie drafted this year, let alone last year. So doesn't have a lot of wear and tear on him either. So that's a good sign as well.
Yeah, there's this YouTuber named Buffalo Jets Fan. He talks about this a lot. He always says wide receivers and running backs, they age differently. Wide receivers, they hit 30, and that's usually it. Running backs, it's all about the yardage. It's all about the hits you're taking. Breece Hall has taken a lot more of those hits than Braylon Allen has. I forget the name of the commentator who brought that up, but very good point there. That youth is going to be a big difference maker.
So do you think either one of these rooms we see trades in them, running back or wide receiver?
I wouldn't want a running back room change as long as everyone's healthy, of course. Maybe if there's an injury to one of those top two guys, you go into the market, see what you can get. But running backs, you also don't generally get guys with, unless they're super old in a trade. Wide receiver, though, at this point of the season, I would not want a trade because there's not enough teams that think that are going to tank for. I know you don't like that term, but for better for worse, I think it describes what I'm going for here. I don't think there's any teams that think they're out of the season. There's not really any teams at this point of the year that are going to give up a wide receiver 2 level player. The other thing is the Jets. You have a lot of cap space going into this offseason. So what type of guy do you want to bring in as wide receiver 2? I would say a guy who maybe you could re-sign after the season or mid-season, get a 2-3 year extension on his contract. Ideally, someone after 26. Younger than 26, right? Still has a few more years left. The thing is, I don't see those guys in the NFL. I don't see the names there. The Packers might be the only team that might be interested in something like that. But we just now talked about with this Micah Parsons trade, they're going all in. Why get rid of a top 4 receiver on the Packers if you're going all in? It doesn't make sense to me. I just think at this point in time, it's too late to go into the trade market. If anything, maybe we win 3 of those first 5 games, and you're thinking, okay, we have a chance to the playoffs. We're looking good. Let's go get in a wide receiver 2 and give up a ton of capital for that. I think that is the most likely possibility there.
So, okay, we've set both rooms. Neither room in your mind is going to change here much this season, if at all. And so are the Jets, we've talked about how their wide receiver room isn't that impressive, and you seem much higher on their running back room. Are the Jets a run-first offense?
Well, there's one big question mark. I don't think we even have this on our discussion topics for today, but his name is Elijah Vera Tucker. He, and the last few years, every single year when he gets injured, because he gets injured every single year, there's always a major drop-off on the running game. He is one of the better guards in the league when it comes to the running part of the game. He's good in pass, don't get me wrong, but running, that's where he excels. You just now lost him. Now, I think they're going to put Joe Tittman at right guard. And we'll see how that plays out. They do have a good center in Josh Myers as a backup, who I think he can be a starting center, have Joe Tittman be your guard. I don't know if that running offense, with the injury of Eric Tucker, is going to be able to carry as much weight as it would have with a healthy O-line. So that's a big question for me. In terms of the style itself, I think a run-first offense is very doable today, because we saw it last year with the team that won the Super Bowl, with the Eagles. They ran the ball a lot, and they did it well. They had Saquon Barkley. The Jets don't have Saquon Barkley. They had a much better O-line than the Jets have, in my opinion, but some of those guys are also a little bit older, so maybe it evens out a bit. But either way, we've seen it work today in the NFL. We've seen the Eagles do it. I think the Jets have a shot at it. We'll see how it looks out. I think with how deep the running back room is, if you get 4 running backs onto your game day roster, a run-first offense would be a lot easier for the Jets to accomplish.
All right. Let's transition over to the other team that plays in New Jersey, the New York Giants. Yes, I know what I said, and I said it correctly. Jackson Dart, they traded up into the first round to get this guy. Do we think that he starts this season? And if so, when would you want him to start? I mean, he had a pretty good preseason.
Yeah, the Giants, they have a tough schedule, right? They're seeing tomorrow they're gonna meet the Commanders. That's not an easy team, especially in week 1 when they're fully healthy, to get matched up against. Then they have the Cowboys, the Cowboys, they lost Micah Parsons. They have a lot of talent there. That's gonna be a tough game. Then you have Chiefs and then Chargers. I see a very realistic path here where the Giants lose those first 4 games. Game 5 against the Saints, I think that's a very good moment to put in your young rookie quarterback in a low pressure situation. To me, that's ideal for Jackson Dart. So I think the Saints game is the best option if you want to get him involved early on. But if the Giants can win 2 of those games, kind of similar to the Jets, where if you're 2-2, I think they stick with Wilson, because Brian Daboll, he's fighting for his job. He's coaching for his job this year, and he understands that a rookie quarterback, even if he looked well in the preseason, he may not look as good in the regular season. He's even seen a quarterback who looked really good in the regular season look terrible shortly after with his last starting quarterback. So, I think Daboll will understand enough that a game manager in Russell Wilson might keep him his job more than Jackson Dart throwing the ball too much, getting a couple of interceptions there. That being said, if you are in a good position against the Saints, and you feel like the defense is playing well enough, you feel like some of the playmakers in offense are doing well enough, but you haven't had a win yet, I think Jackson Dart, week 5, that's the moment.
Okay. The only issue I have with starting him against the Saints, which the Saints aren't going to be good. I've been very open about my opinion on that. But we have then the Eagles, then the Broncos, then the Eagles again right after that. So I think that could be a hard follow-up to that first start. However, we've talked about how hard the schedule is. How many wins do you think the Giants actually get this season?
Okay, I'll read the wins off. I think the Saints is the only game that I have them favored for in the first half of the season. And then the second half doesn't really get much better. I see a very realistic chance where they win 2 games against the Saints and the Raiders. But even the Raiders, I think they're going to be better than people expect them to be. I don't think they're going to be great. They're going to be better than a lot of us are expecting them to be this season. So I would say 4 wins is realistic. You get an upset maybe against the Bears or the Broncos. And then I think you can beat the Cowboys at home in MetLife. That should be a winnable game.
Yeah, I think the Giants, I've got them at 3. I'll give them the Bears game and then the Saints and the, what was the other game? Raiders. I think they'll steal 3 more games. Maybe not again. I don't think they'll steal one against the Broncos, maybe injuries, but I think they could maybe steal one from the 49ers more, or the Patriots maybe. But yeah, I got their ceiling at like 6 games, which they're kind of rebuilding, so that's okay. That's okay.
I think one underrated factor that might win the Giants an extra 2 games maybe this year is that injuries happen in the NFL. And you're probably going to see a team or two that's missing their QB1 and doesn't have a great QB2. For the Giants, you have 3 quarterbacks who you can be at least comfortable with them starting, with Jackson Dart and Winston behind Wilson. So you have 3 guys you could be happy with in that room behind two guys behind Wilson if there's an injury. I think that's going to be a big help to the Giants at the end of the season. So I could see a 6-win season.
Okay. Well, let's move on to these Colts questions.
Yeah, I mean, to start off, there's really one guy who I see on social media, I see in the news, I see everywhere, I see on TV when we're talking about the Colts, and it's always AR. I feel like I don't even care that much about the Colts. I don't really care about the division. I never really watch games unless it's on prime time or if I'm doing nothing else from that division. But every time I see a Colts thing, it's Anthony Richardson. Does he have a future as a starter in the NFL?
Yes. So the issue with Anthony Richardson is the Colts have backed themselves into a corner here. They've created this quarterback carousel, as Chuss likes to call it, where they've had all these veterans, and then they finally thought they had their answer in Anthony Richardson. Except they don't, right? That's why Daniel Jones is starting. And so Anthony Richardson, I think, as I talked about at the beginning of this, he has all of the physical traits to be a good quarterback. I think the Colts failed him a little bit in that they didn't really give him a coach that maybe knew how to develop a quarterback as a head coach. Shane Steichen was a new head coach, first-time head coach. Anthony Richardson, inexperienced, young, maybe didn't even know how he needed to develop. So I would be interested to see, and I've said this before and I got hate for it, but I'm still going to stand my ground. I'd be interested to see if he got traded to a team like the Rams, who has a veteran guy right now, but they don't really have a plan for the future, it seems. Trade him to the Rams, let Sean McVay, an experienced coach. And I know people say, well, Sean McVay didn't develop Jared Goff. He has never developed a quarterback. He did, though. He kind of not the Jared Goff we know now, but he got to a Super Bowl with Jared Goff as his quarterback. So, and even if you could keep Matthew Stafford for another year as well, that might help. I just don't know that Anthony Richardson with the Colts is a thing, but I think he could start somewhere else if he strengthens his maturity a little bit and just, kind of toughens up as well. His injuries, you can't always control those, but he's had a lot, unfortunately.
One thing you said at the end right there, you talked about the mentality with Richardson. That to me, it seems almost insurmountable. We've seen so many issues from him in such a short career so far. Do you think that's something more on the coach's side, or is that more of an AR problem himself?
I mean, ultimately, it's an AR problem, right? Because, even if the coach isn't toughening him up, he has to take accountability for his actions. He's a grown dude. He's a millionaire. He's playing a sport for a living. You gotta, kind of take accountability for your own actions. You can point at the coach if you want, but ultimately, I think it's your own decisions. And AR he didn't play a lot at all before getting to the NFL. I think he started in less than, or maybe even played in less than 20 games in college. So he was not, this rugged, I've been hit 100 times type player that a lot of quarterbacks are. We know how they react to injury. He was kind of a giant question mark.
Yeah, and this is not really on our list for today, but just something I'm thinking about right now. There's a few teams in the NFL that seem to have attitude issues constantly. First that comes to mind is Tomlin's Steelers, especially the wide receiver room. They always have something going on. The Patriots, the last few years, have always had attitude issues in their wide receiver room. since we're talking about this coach versus player thing, how much do you think that factors in, not just in AR situation, but around the league? To what extent do you think a coach needs to step in to those tough situations with players who aren't putting everything they need to put in or complaining too much? How much of an impact do you think coaches have here?
Hey, I think it kind of depends, because yes, a coach's job is to, keep the team united, keep them on that same front, keep everyone kind of on the same page, humbled, focused on the team first mentality. But at the same time, we got to remember we're not dealing with high schoolers. We're not even dealing with college age kids. These are full grown men. I mean, some of these men are older than their coaches are, right? So it's hard, I think, at times, and I've obviously never been in an NFL locker room, so I don't know. But I think it might be hard at times for coaches to, kind of almost punish players when the player has been in the NFL longer than the coach has been coaching. Tomlin is one of the rare exceptions to that. Tomlin has been the head coach for the Steelers forever, right? Andy Reid, the Chiefs, and the Eagles, he's been in the NFL forever. But some of these younger guys like Shane Steichen, Zach Taylor, they may not necessarily have the respect from some players around the league, at least the players that are going to be acting up and causing those issues.
No, that's a very good point. And I think it's going to be interesting now as NIL continues with these players being stars to extents we haven't seen before in college, having that stardom and entering the NFL. That is going to be something to kind of keep an eye on. But moving on, Daniel Jones, he's the quarterback for the Colts in Indiana. He's the guy who everyone's going to be wearing his jersey, right? He's the future of the Colts.
Yeah.
But for what it's worth, you still have AR on the team. He's going to be cheap next year. Would you rather stick to the true star, the future of your team in Daniel Jones? Or I'm being sarcastic, by the way, just for the viewers who – and anyway, would you rather stick with Daniel Jones, or do you see this view of drafting someone new, keeping on to AR? What's the future for that QB room?
Yeah, so first of all, there is a world, there is a timeline where Daniel Jones comes out and he just balls out. There is that world out there, and he is the future of the Colts. I don't think we're living in that world, but that world does exist theoretically. If the Daniel Jones experiment fails, yes, you still have AR, but I think you kind of how much are we going to go back and forth with this? I think with next year's quarterback class, you have to take a quarterback at some point. Everyone's talking about Arch Manning. Maybe not as much anymore after that Ohio State game. But you still have Drew Aller. You have Carson Beck, Garrett Nussmeier, Cade Klubnik. You have, is that name Cade, the Clemson quarterback? Klubnik? But anyway, you have a lot of good or at least decent quarterback prospects coming into this next draft. So I think your hand has kind of been forced, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I think at the very least, if you're the Colts, you have to take someone in round 5, round 6. Just take a shot if you're not going for a much better prospect. And talking about drafting quarterback, Zach Heath of The Athletic reported that general manager Chris Ballard was forced to draft a quarterback in 2023 by Irsay. Do you think this is true? Would they have gone for Levis if AR was off the board? Yeah.
So the fun, not fun part of this report, but I think it's very interesting that this report didn't come out until Jim Irsay died, right? So Jim Irsay isn't here to say, no, that never happened. And, Chris Ballard, he could come out and say that never happened. I don't think he's the type of guy, though, to really – he's not going to throw Jim Irsay back under the bus, though, especially when his daughters are his new bosses now, right? It's still in the Irsay family. I also don't think that this is true. Just it doesn't make sense to me. The Colts were comfortable and just, doing this veteran rotational thing, they appeared to still be comfortable doing it because they put in Gardner Minshew over AR at times. They were comfortable with just having a guy in there. And maybe Irsay said, like, hey, if these two guys are there, take one of them. I really like them. But at the end of the day, Chris Ballard's the GM. So that's the guy we have to look at. And if you look at Chris Ballard when he was with the Bears, if you look at Chris Ballard when he was with the Chiefs, he always, and even in his other interviews with the Colts, he's always talking about traits. He's always talking about things that, like, physical stuff that he likes. He's always talking about potential. There is not a more potential type guy than Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson was made for Chris Ballard. Chris Ballard was probably had Anthony Richardson on his board the day he graduated high school, and said, if we need a quarterback in that draft where he shows up, I'm taking him. I don't care where. I think he probably got approval from Irsay because he was Irsay's guy. They were close, it seems, but I think that Anthony Richardson probably would have been drafted by Chris Ballard wherever he was if he could justify it.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know the Colts as well, but to me this seems like the type of thing I'd hear from the Jets or Cowboys, with like ownership getting a little bit too meddly with things. But that is interesting to hear your take on that. Talking about the Cowboys, talking about Jerry Jones, his name's been all over the place since the Micah Parsons situation, and he still thinks the Cowboys still think they are a Super Bowl contender without Micah. Are they delusional?
No. Yes. They are delusional because, first of all, Jerry Jones's big thing was we need to stop the run. And so they brought in Kenny Clark. Okay. Kenny Clark was great. He's had a great career. He's not a long-term solution to stop the run, though. And he's got an injury history. And then you got 4 first-round picks now in the next 2 drafts, but I don't like draft picks as, like, justifying the trade because they're lotto picks, right? I mean, you can have good ones, but like Anthony Richardson, who we just got done talking about, he's a first-round pick. We got Jahan Dotson's the wide receiver 3 on the Eagles, and he's not even on the team that drafted him. He was a first-round pick. So a first-round pick doesn't guarantee like an elite player in any way. Obviously, it's more likely, but I don't think this justifies trading a top 5 player in the NFL at all. So I don't know what he's talking about here. I mean, yeah, they were more competitive against the Eagles than I thought they would be, but also it probably helped that the Eagles' entire defensive scheme got, derailed by Spitgate that occurred 6 seconds into the game, and you could just run up the middle there. I don't think anyone had Javonte Williams getting 2 touchdowns in the first half of that game. And I don't think he does if Jalen Carter's in. But yeah, the Cowboys, I don't even know if they're going to get 3rd in the division anymore. They're probably going to get 4th in the division. All the Giants are there. Okay, they'll get 3rd in the division. But it's gonna be rough. We've
said it like 3 or 4 times throughout the stream. Can't understand it. This makes no sense to me or anyone. It probably doesn't make any sense to Jerry Jones either. But yeah, that's all the questions we got. Do you have any comments or?
No, I don't. I've got my little spiel I do at the end, but other than that, I had fun doing this. I like this. We'll probably do this again. This was the first ever No Buts About It 3-minute drill. We kept it down to about an hour, so we did pretty good.
Yeah. No, I mean comments in the from YouTube.
We got Chris. He always says Skull Vikings. Me and him are gonna have beef week 3, and that was it. But other than that, that's okay.
Well, it was great being on. I think we had a lot of fun discussions here.
Yes. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for watching. If you are watching later on, we'll cut these up a little bit to make them a little bit shorter, condense these and post these throughout the week and the next 2 weeks, actually. But Until next time, go do something nice for someone.